Kita mula? Boleh? Selamat tengah hari dan selamat datang untuk sesi media ini. Tujuan mengadakan sesi media ialah untuk meminta kerajaan supaya withdraw Clause 41 Employment Amendment Bill yang akan dibentangkan hari besok pada hari Khamis iaitu besok. Kalau kita baca, ini adalah berkait dengan rang undang-undang ataupun amendment rang undang-undang untuk meminda Akta Kerja. This is Employment Act, an amendment to the Employment Act 1955. And specifically, I would like to touch upon the definition of forced labour. The definition of forced labour ataupun paksa buruh. Kalau kita baca, if we look at the amendment here, if we look at the explanatory statement here, belakang, it says, for example, the bill seeks to amend the Employment Act 1955 to comply with the international standards and practices as required by the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, the Malaysian-United States Labour Consistency Plan, and the International Labour Organization. So if we want to amend the amendments here, bring changes to the existing bill, then it has to comply to the International Labour Organization requirements. Number two, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, as well as the consistency plan between Malaysia and the United States. Now, actually, I would like to point out there's a major error here, and the error is it is not the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. It is the Comprehensive Progressive Agreement, Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. Okay, so it's a mistake here that they have made, a mistake here. But more importantly, it says the point I want to raise is on forced labor, and the way the government has defined forced labor, which you find in section 41 or page 16 of the amendment. Now, if you look at the ILO definition, the ILO defines forced labor as all work or service which is exacted from any person under the threat of a penalty and for which the person has not offered himself or herself voluntarily. That is the definition of the ILO on forced labor. And the Malaysian explanatory note, the Malaysian bill says that Malaysia will comply to the ILO labor standards. Forced labor definition. But clearly, this is not the case. So therefore, that's number one. So, and also there are no indicators. There are altogether 11 indicators in the ILO forced labor requirements. One of them is abuse of vulnerability, deception, restriction of movement, isolation, physical and sexual violence, intimidation and threats, retention of identity documents, withholding of wages, debt bondage, abusive working and living conditions, and excessive overtime. Now, this bill that we have, the amendment bill only talks about restriction of movement, and makes no mention of the other 10 indicators that the ILO wants countries to comply. Okay, so this is quite important if you want to follow the forced labor requirement. Now, also, another point to note, and the more important point to note is, Malaysia has a law which is called the Anti-Trafficking in Persons and Anti-Smuggling of Migrants Act. Anti-Trafficking in Persons and Anti-Smuggling of Migrants Act, ATIPSOM, in Bill 2007. Now, clearly, this is the principal law. Okay? Now, which means that the principal law act criminalizes trafficking. It criminalizes forced labor. This is important, right? However, and provides higher penalties. However, the Employment Act 1955 is a quasi-criminal law with limited elements of criminal prosecution and standard of proving a crime which is much lower. So therefore, what the government has to do is one, withdraw this bill, okay, and change or bring amendments to the Anti-Trafficking in Persons and Anti-Smuggling of Migrants Act. Change that law. That is the principal law. So amend it, and then come back and change the Employment Act, and then come back to change the Employment Act. So therefore, the Antipsom Act should be amended to provide a definition of forced labor, because right now, even in the Antipsom Act, there is no definition. Here is a very vague and a watered down definition. Okay, so make the Principal Act the definition of provide a definition of forced labor, and outline the 11 indicators as per the ILO Convention 29, which Malaysia has ratified. Subsequently, the Employment Act can be amended. Okay, so without incorporating the issues raised, how can this bill become the law of the land? Okay, and therefore, if you want to see how seriously we have fallen behind, we just need to look at how products like from Simdabi, FGV, Top Glove, and Supermax were stopped by the customs in the US because of forced labor. As such, just the books against the ILO definition and indicators of forced labor as a framework, this bill falls far short and should be withdrawn for failing to meet adequate standards though. Okay, so basically this bill, the bill specifically section number 41, section 41 should be withdrawn by the Ministry of Human Resources, because it does not comply, it does not meet the forced labor standards of the International Labour Organization. Now this is as you know, a lot of these Malaysian companies, FGV, Top Glove, Supermax, all the products have been sent back because of forced labor. This is a golden opportunity to make the amendments so that people have confidence in your law. People have faith in your law. People think that you can implement laws that do not violate workers' rights, especially on forced labor. But now you have fell far short of that. And therefore, this is the best time for the government to amend the Anti-Trafficking in Persons and Anti-Smuggling of Migrants Act, amend it, because that's the principal act, and then come back to Parliament and then amend the Employment Bill, number 40. So therefore, I ask the government to withdraw the bill because it makes a mockery of the process, and also it insults people who are victims of forced labor. Any questions?
You wanted the definition to indicate all of those 10 indicators of the
Two. One is the definition, what exactly is forced labor, and number two, outline the 11. Here you only have one. There's a restriction of movement. There are other 11 which I've listed in the statement, no? Other 10. So they're altogether 11. Altogether 11, yeah. Thank you very much.